Back in 2016, I made a video comparing the V20 and the Note 5 that became the highest viewed video on my channel. Back then, I said that the two phones complement each other. Since I carried both in my pocket at the same time, the fault of one was pretty much filled by the other. These days, 4 iterations of phones later from each, now I feel saying that the V60 and Note 10 complement each other as well wouldn't be as true. The V60 still feels like a V-series phone. Quad DAC, focus on content creation and becoming more of a productivity powerhouse. It's hard for me to not recommend it to a fan of the line, as I definitely am. The Note 10, however, feels like more of a departure from the Note 5 and is even closer relative to the Note 8. Samsung basically told you if you want the big features like a better screen, bigger battery, micro SD card, that you have to get the Note 10 Plus. Despite that, however, that doesn't mean I don't feel that this is a Note at heart. It still has an S Pen and all of its features, decent when it comes to camera performance, but that'll come later. With that out of the way, let's get into specs. So, both have 1080p displays, OLED. This has a triple camera array. This has dual camera, but this is a 64 megapixel camera that zooms in so you get a 32 megapixel, essentially 32 megapixel like telephoto image, zoomed in image. And sorry, honestly, it works as well as a telephoto lens. Sorry, I had something stuck in my throat. It works as good as the telephoto lens on here, honestly. And the best part about it, it doesn't switch to any sort of other main camera or anything like that. When you're like in a lower lit situation, or if the telephoto lens is covered, it is just one camera, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you have your wide angle. I think it's a 120 degree or 135 degree wide angle lens, whereas this is a 120 degree wide angle lens. 64 megapixel and I think 16 megapixel wide angle lens. You have your Z camera on the back for a pretty decent portrait photo shots. They actually are really good. I wouldn't say they're bad, but I'm not going to talk about that really right now. You got your dual LED flash. You have your main telephoto and wide angle lens. All of them are 12 except for the wide angle, which is 16. You have your single LED flash. Snapdragon 855, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigs of UFS 3.0 storage, 3,500 milliamp hour battery, USB-C, obviously, no headphone jack, quick charge 4 support, and obviously Samsung super fast charging support, because it's a Samsung phone, so it should have that. 128 gigabytes of internal storage, 8 gigabytes of RAM as well, micro SD card support, UFS 2.1 storage, but honestly, the difference is not that big in terms of like speed. So I think the Snapdragon 865 definitely makes up for that. What else? Like I said, 8 gigabytes of RAM. You have a hi-fi quad DAC with your 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, USB-C, obviously. Both have stereo speakers that are really good. 4 mics on here, and I believe it's 2 on the Note 10. Both can do 4K 60, but due to Snapdragon 865, there's no time limit on the 4K video. Both have front-facing cameras. I believe both are 10 megapixels. I don't use the front-facing cameras, so I tend to forget. Both have OLED displays. Both have in-display fingerprint sensors. Ultrasonic versus like an in-display camera, I believe. Kind of like the OnePlus 6T. Both have always-on displays. I factory reset my Note 10 because I was trying to see if that would help with my battery issue. It didn't. So yeah. And honestly, that's pretty much it. 5G versus 4G LTE. And that's pretty much it. And a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in there versus 3,500. So first I want to get into the display and the quality of each display. And honestly, when it comes to both displays, there aren't really any crippling issues. Both are quality 1080p panels, though I'd give the edge to the V60 because it has a flat display. As you guys can see, there's no curve, no sort of like edge to edge waterfall display crap that Samsung actually went away with the S20 and stuff like that. And that decreases the chances of seeing stuff like color shifting, and it's just easier to handle overall. Despite Samsung saying they improved palm rejection and stuff like that, it doesn't really feel that much better than my Note 8. So, which was decent, but it wasn't like the best thing in the world. When it comes to battery, though, the V60 just stomps the Note 10. There really is no question about that. A 5,000 milliamp hour battery versus 3,500. On top of my Note 10 also having this battery issue where it just doesn't want to charge really anymore. It'll charge up definitely, but it only goes to like, some days it'll go to 70 some percent, some days it'll only go to 50, whatever. Or it'll tell me that it'll be on 1% for like a whole night. Like, it's weird. And it just doesn't want to charge. So whatever on that. I'm not gonna, go deeper into that because it doesn't really matter, but because it's not going to affect everybody. But yeah, screen on time I gonna get on each phone. On the Note 10, depending on how I use it, if I'm doing a whole bunch of gaming, say I go from 100% and I go down to 60, that's maybe like 2.5 hours of gaming. On the V60, I do that same amount, it goes down 20%. I can get maybe 4.5 to 5 hours of screen on time on my Note 10. It's kind of sporadic, but it's not like the worst thing in the world. On the V60, I constantly, outside of the dual screen case, I can constantly get like 8 to 9 hours of screen on time, no problem. The lowest being like 7. In the dual screen case, I can get up to 6, lowest being maybe 4.5 or 5 hours of screen on time. And obviously that depends on your usage. Don't take my numbers as like the true fact, as the gospel of how good this battery is. It honestly will depend on how good your Wi-Fi is, how good your data connection is, and stuff like that as well. So yeah, keep that in mind. And obviously what you do on your phone. If you do nothing but gaming, if you do a lot of gaming, honestly, I don't really see a problem with the battery life on the V60. It's actually really good for that. Same with here as well, but I give it to the V60 just because it has that bigger battery, and it will just it'll outlast the Note 10, most definitely. The one thing I will say the Note 10 definitely is better at is it does charge faster by like 10 to 20 minutes. This will charge up from like 5 to 100% in an hour and 40 minutes. This will charge up from around the same, from like 5 to 100% in like, hour 20. And that's actually not that bad at all for either. Honestly, Quick Charge 4, the last like 20%, it likes to trickle charge. So that's why it takes that much longer when it goes from 80 to 100. So yeah, just keep that in mind there. Both are still really good when it comes to that. When it comes to camera quality, this is highly personal in terms of what you prefer in your camera. How I look at cameras may not be how you do, so keep that in mind. While the whole industry seems to cream over Samsung's cameras, I just don't really see the hype. My Note 10 likes to oversaturate and overexpose images. I've said that plenty of times before. And it's really not changed overall. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, sometimes I could get really good images out of it, but there are also times where I'm in an already pretty good lit situation. Like, I'm in a store, like a Target or something, and I want to take a picture. It'll overexpose the image still. So just keep that in mind. Not that those problems aren't existent on the V60. It's just way less prominent. Like, sometimes, like, say you're in a lower lit situation, it'll overexpose a little bit, but it's not terrible. When you're already in a well lit situation, it doesn't really tend to overexpose. So, yeah. And oversaturation, honestly, is something that always bothered me with Samsung phones ever since the Note 5. Hasn't really changed here, so, yeah. Overall, though, I think both phones really are good when it comes to cameras. You can't really go wrong with either. But if you don't mind a little bit of editing, if you don't like that oversaturation, I wouldn't go with the Note 10, really. The V60 has really had an improvement in its auto mode from the V20 or 30 or the G7. Back then, it would have pretty bland auto processing. Like, the greens would definitely be green, but they wouldn't have any sort of punch to them. Now you can definitely get that. And I'll link my Instagram below just so you guys can see that, because I take a lot of pictures on there and I'm not going to edit this video just to, show a whole bunch of pictures. And it doesn't do it justice to show a phone camera recording and showing you guys right here. So yeah, I'm gonna just do that and just link my Instagram below and so you guys can look at that. Video. Honestly, the V60 is just the king there in terms of these two. I would say that you get more features. You definitely get more ways to customize your experience so that you can get the most out of your video recording experience. Like, both of these do indeed support HDR10, I believe. And the Note 10 finally has a pro video mode. I made a video about it, so you guys can look at that one. And of course I did that. But the one thing where I'd say the V60 is definitely better overall, though, when it comes to this, like I said, more modes. 4K 60 without you needing to string together multiple videos, 5-minute clips. You could just record nonstop and it's no problem. It will eat memory. And if you're willing to take the bitrate hit and turn on HEVC so that you can take less storage, then it's honestly just going to be something that you'll just have to deal with. And that's why it's good to have a micro SD card slot. Yeah. The one you go to, where is it? Manual video mode on here. On here, you still get every single, when you start recording, you get every single option that you can use. Whereas on here, you start recording, as you guys can, well, you can't really see right now. And of course, I turned off the phone, but in my previous video, I detailed it. It just turns off. Like I said, it just, shut up. It just disables your ISO, your shutter speed, and switching your camera, basically. You can't really switch cameras on here either. You can only zoom in and zoom out, basically. You can't go to the wide angle lens and when you use the wide angle lens for manual video, you can't adjust the focus. It's just autofocus, which, whatever, really. But yeah, it's pretty much it in terms of that. You do get the option to turn on where is it at? Hi-fi audio, so that it can record a high quality version of the audio in the video. And it's really good. But what I would caution against is that if you use video editors, look into it and see which video editors indeed support hi-fi audio, because stuff like apps like Power Director don't. The audio feed will just come up as jarble and you won't really be able to hear anything. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the video portion of that. But when it comes to audio, and I guess I'll just talk about this as well. When you plug in a headset or you use a Bluetooth headset on the V60, it'll play back the audio that you're recording of the video recording so that you can hear what it sounds like through the headset. That's a really nice feature. That's not a thing that's on the Note 10, at least through a corded headset. So just keep that in mind as well if you really want something like that. Audio quality. Now, this is obviously where LG is still king. Is going to have the best corded audio that you can get on a phone, period. And on top of that, you get really good speakers too. The speakers on the Note 10 are no slouch at all. I do still feel these are some of the best speakers I've ever had on a phone. Second to these, the problem with the Note 10 speakers is that when you use them, and you have it at max volume, one will clearly be louder than the other, and it's never consistent as to which one it is. Like, sometimes it'll be the bottom, sometimes it'll be the top. One will play more sound than the other, whereas on the V60, it's pretty much balanced. I don't really hear any of those kind of issues on here. But the one thing I will say is that you basically have to have it at max, the V60's speakers at max volume if you really want to hear how loud they get. They don't get distorted or anything like that. But say if you go down 2-3 stops in terms of the speaker, it'll just get like weirdly low. Maybe it's just some tuning stuff they got to figure out in an update or something like that. But it's just something I want to bring up. Call quality. At the end of the day, these are still phones. So I would say that both are on par with each other. I wouldn't say one is better than the other necessarily. They're both pretty level in that regard. But where the edge I would give the V60 is that you get a bigger speaker grill slit, you get a bigger receiver slit, and you don't really get that on the Note 10. It's pretty minimal. You can't really tell what it is. And a lot of reviewers, when this phone first came out, they thought the phone had an in-display speaker. So it was kind of confusing to a lot of people. I even had to look it up and go to Samsung's site to see that on their press photos, it does indeed have a very small slit that you can't see. So, yeah. Call quality overall, though, is still really good. And in terms of other communication things like texting, I just want to talk about like haptics and stuff like that. Haptics on both of these phones are really good. It feels more substantial on the V60, probably because it's a thicker phone. And that's honestly something I do prefer. It's really nice on both of these phones either way. And saying the camera app on both of these, if you're doing like manual focus and stuff like that, both will like click every time you move like one stop on like say your manual focus or anything like or something like that. It's more pronounced and it feels more like satisfying on the V60, probably because they've been doing it since the V30. So they've pretty much got that tuned, and that's pretty cool as well. And it feels nice. You can't really go wrong with either there. I touched on gaming a little bit, but I guess I'll do a little bit more right here. Both are good for gaming. Like I said, you can't go wrong with either. The A55 is no slouch, really. It's just the A65 does better with certain games where it'll brute force a lot of things so that a game will indeed run smoother. And that's something that is really nice. But say you get the V60 with the dual screen case and you want to emulate Nintendo DS or something like that. This is basically a super powerful DS in your pocket. It's huge. And it's also a phone. And it's also a very good, like, music player and stuff like that. So you get all that in one package. And that's really nice as well. Overall, in terms of like a wrap up here, I'd say the V60 makes it more and more hard for me to actually want to have two phones on me at all times. From the battery to other things like, this phone also has active stylus support, and the S Pen is something that you get in the Note, obviously, and that's an active stylus basically. And you get most features with an active stylus on here that you get on here. You just don't get like being able to use it as a shutter button in your camera or like adjust the volume from gestures and stuff like that. You don't get those type of things. But an active stylus will work both on the main screen and the dual screen. And that's a really nice touch. It honestly just makes me feel that I feel it's time to move on from the Note for me personally. But, that's whatever. I may not. I've said that a few years, but every time something about the Note brings me back. So who knows? The regular Note 10, while it's not widely talked about, and regardless of my personal issues with it, I still really love the phone. It's a great phone just to have around to do extra stuff. Like an extra phone to record video and stuff like that, or take pictures or game and all that extra stuff. If you want a smaller Note, it's still a really good option, in my opinion, definitely. And if you want a V-series phone, you definitely can't go wrong with the V60. And that's all I really want to say for this video here, you guys. This is Sparta. Thank you guys for watching Extra Support. Hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday, whatever time of day it is in this area. Have a good one.